All right, what's up, ladies and gents? We are back with another TagCast. I'm your host, Zhang, and I always forget to actually introduce myself, so I should probably start doing that more. But this episode, we're talking about a character that I've actually in the past used to see a lot of, but for whatever reason, I don't know what the deal is. People just don't play him anymore. But that's Steve, of course. Still a really good character by all accounts. So I want to, get some conversation going and maybe get some interest back in this character a little bit. So with that, my guest for this episode is Gangsta of Love. Yeah, I'll introduce you here real quick, and since this is your first time on the podcast, just kind of real quick, give us a background. Where you're from, when did you start playing, and how did you end up playing Steve?
Okay, first off, what's up, everyone? My name is Nelson, and I live in Boston, Mass. And Steve is such a frustrating character at times, but I started playing him back in DR when I saw some Nin videos that just like blew my mind. Ever since he did that wall push into wall push 1-2-1-1-2, and that just blew my mind because I love T4, and he was the only character that had that wall push. So that's when I started playing Steve. But it just so happened that he was such a good character back in the day, and as the Tekken games started moving forward, he kind of, I don't want to say fell off, but not became he didn't become a big interest to a lot of people. But yeah.
It's that's a I've noticed, like I just said, I noticed the same thing, and I don't know if it's like to me, and of course we'll get into this when we start talking about more specifics, but as I see him, like as he has progressed as a character over the series, he's seemed to have gotten like more refined. Like when they brought him in T4 and then especially through T5, like he became so overpowered and easy and cheesy. Like
Yeah.
everyone knew how to play him and everyone, played him. Obviously, in 5.0, he was just ridiculously good. But then they
Yeah.
started to refine him and like make him, what's the best way to put it? Like it required a little bit more skill and knowledge to play him, but he was still really good. And I don't know if like maybe that's a turnoff for some people where they just can't mash their head against the buttons and expect to win. Yeah, I don't know, but from what I've seen in Tag Two, it seems like he's still a really good character. He's built on that pressure bulldog style. So I guess kind of to open the conversation there, like where do you still see that as his primary strength in this game, or where do you see his his big area of expertise, so to speak?
Oh, that's actually a good question. So Steve has changed a lot since like T6 and T6 BR, and then to Tag 2, he's also got some changes. He's definitely been tweaked a lot in Tag 2. Um, he's definitely, I'd say in the older games, he was definitely like a pit bull kind of character, get in your face. Like in T6, the sidestep hitbox wasn't so big, so you can definitely lock a lot of characters down. Like he had tracking in both directions, so it was really really hard to avoid Steve. His only disadvantage was that he had a lot of highs. In Tag 2, since you can sidestep, you can avoid a lot of things. Spacing is a lot better. You have to play a lot slower with Steve because he doesn't track as well as he did. Um, and I mean, one little whiff in this game can be, devastating. You could lose a game. So you definitely have to slow it down with him. He lost some frame advantage off a lot of moves. So he's definitely, I say he's in the middle of, he can be a pitbull if he wants to, especially at the wall because at the wall he's deadly. But you definitely have to slow it down with him in tag two because you can get launched and killed in this game.
Well, that's kind of as my first follow up question. You just mentioned how he's changed a lot from T6 now to Tag 2, and specifically,
Yep.
you said he's lost a lot of frame advantage on certain things. I actually haven't messed with him too much in this game, so
Yep.
kind of walk us through those moves, like what has changed, and like it sounds like you had some specific moves in mind that were prevalent in T6 that you can't really use the same way now anymore. So what moves are those, and what do you have to be careful now of?
Okay. So like, okay, so Steve doesn't have really good punishment. That's where he lacks also because his main Punisher was 112, which is his 10 frame Punisher, and his 112 used to be +3 on hit. Now it's +1. After +3, you can go into like a follow up maybe of a down forward 2. You have a lot of mix ups. You could the +3 was big for Steven T6. Having the +1 in tag 2 doesn't really do much for him. I mean, he could definitely, it's like mostly like if you hit 112, you want to hold back. Like he doesn't have a lot of options. That was the big one for me. But Steve, he got a lot of changes off of not really with frames, but we're talking more of like his down forward 2 on counter hit. He used to have a very consistent forward 2 bound afterwards, which now is no longer in the game because they nerfed forward 2. The hitbox is a lot smaller, so it doesn't really catch off the ground like it used to in T6. So that was a really, really big one.
Is that just gone completely, or is it just inconsistent?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
It's thrown up. What this is what it was. In T6BR they buffed the forward 2 hitbox slightly, right? But that slight raise in hitbox allowed him to get certain juggles off of, like, let's say down forward 2, he can get the forward 2 in. Let's say he used to do flicker 1 down 1, which is like a punch to a hook punch.
Yeah.
After that connected, he could do a forward 2 bound, which is, I mean, that was just ridiculous. That was a bonus. I don't think they planned for that, but that small tweak definitely like gave him so much juggle opportunities. Oh, he could also parry back 12, and after the parry, he can do a forward 2 bound, which was a just frame, which was just ridiculous. But yeah, they tweaked the forward 2 so it no longer catches the ground hit, and it's pretty much just used as a whiff punishment from now on in, like, bound combos, stuff like that.
So yeah, that's a pretty big change actually, because a lot of that stuff I remember seeing. Okay, so I guess the logical question to ask then is, now that that's gone, or now that that's nerfed, what do you do to make up for that?
Right. Okay, so I'm gonna quickly get into what they changed from T6 to Tag 2.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. Well, oh yeah, and I should mention, like, if you ever need to take since obviously you're the Steve expert, if you ever need to take us in any direction or spit out information before you by all means, you know how to best talk about this character. So if you need to cut me off or whatever, by all means, go for it.
Yeah, but Steve cannot be played the same as he was played in T6. He's definitely, I want to say that it has a lot to do with just the Tag 2 engine alone. Like, not even specific nerfs within the character himself, but the fact that people can move a lot better and avoid a lot of his pitbull pressure, which consists of highs and mids. But yeah, okay, so these are changes that favor him. His PAB down 1. PAB is his peekaboo stance, which you can do by doing forward 34, which is 3+4. After entering that stance, you could do down 1, which is like a really, really quick low poke. He now has, in Tag 2, he now has a full crouch down forward 1 low hit move, which is the same move from PAB down 1. And that's very important for Steve. This is what people wanted since, like, the very beginning, because from full crouch, Steve has nothing. Like, every other character can, do a generic down 4, a generic, low kick. He never had any move to hit you in your legs when he was crouching, besides, like, down back 2, which is launch punishable. So that was a really, really big buff for Steve. His PAB down forward 1-1-2-1 string, which is that 4-hit string that probably you don't really recognize, but you see it often from Steve players. Yeah. That string, the first 3 hits, 1-1-2, would be safe in T6. Now it's I believe the second and third hit are -10, which isn't a big deal, but it does hurt from Mishima's. And then another huge buff that was really, really good for Steve was his back 2, a new move in T6, where it now launches on normal hit, and I believe that move is 16 frames. So Steve having a 16 frame launcher is huge because Steve can't launch to like -19, and that was one of his weak sides. He lacks in punishment. So having a back two, which is a normal hit launcher at 16 frames, is really really good for Steve. It's also -10 on block. And then another buff that he got was his forward 2-1 string. He can now hold forward after that string, which is a mid high and can be ducked. He can now enter PAB from 4-2-1, which is, I mean, people never see it coming because they don't recognize it still. But after 4-2-1, you can just enter PAB and like go for a grab or mix up. So that was a new buff that that definitely helps his game out. And then I guess the big ones are 3-1-1 being natural, go for a wall splat. In T6 it was a natural, only on counter hit. What else? Okay, so that's all the big buffs that really, really help his game out. But I don't think the buffs are good enough to make. Okay, I don't think the buffs are good enough to make him a high tier character. I think he's placed in like, I want to say maybe high mid. Every tier list that I look at, he's like really, really high. But for me personally, my own opinion, I don't think the buffs put him that high because he got a lot of nerfs. And then I'll talk about the nerfs so you guys can kind of see, get a little picture for what I'm talking about. So the big nerfs that hurt him in Tag 2, which I think is the reason why a lot of people don't play him, and has to do with why he fell off in the tier list, because in T6 he was easily top 5. So the moves that do not favor him are down forward 2. Okay, so this is a safe tracking move at around, I want to say 15, 16 frames. Yeah, okay, it's 16 frames, I believe. And on counter hit, this tracking move would give him a easy juggle in T6. He would do 4-4-2 bound afterwards, and he can go into a juggle. In Tag 2, he can no longer hit him with 4-4-2 because it has been nerfed, and he has to opt out for 4-2-1, which is range dependent. So if you hit down forward 2 counter hit from, let's say, a far range or a mid range, 4-2-1 will probably whiff. And so it's very inconsistent. You don't have any follow-ups after down 4-2 on counter hit. So for me personally, that was a big one, and it's very frustrating not having a follow-up. But I know in Tekken Revolution they changed down forward 2. In Tekken Revolution, down forward 2 counter hit is kind of like Kaz's down forward 2. It looks like it has the same counter hit property, which I think was a perfect direction for Steve, because I think that's the way it should be. So another nerf that he got was, as you know, the 4-4-2 doesn't have the same hitbox properties. It's not a big one for me, but I see why it was nerfed. His down back 3-2, which is the stomp to the punch, near the wall he could do down back 3-2, and then do another down back 3-2, yeah. And if the right angle connected in T6, he could get a wall splat from that. And when he wall splatted, he's the king of wall splats. Like, he gets the best damage. So if he wall splatted off of a low, he would, bound, do all this crazy damage, and then your opponent techs, and then he could either go for a quarter circle 1, which is a mid wall splat, or a down back 3-2, which is a stomp. So it's like a 50-50. Oh, it's kind of broken because they both wall splatted at the right, it was just kind of broken. Yeah. So I see why they nerfed the down back 3-2. So what happens in Tag 2 is when you do a down back 3-2 at the wall, the down back 3 just stomps them to the floor. So it's kind of like a spike, and it won't re-splat them. Another nerf that he got was, let's see here. Okay, I mentioned the 1-1-2 is not +3, it's +1. His PAB down 2. Sorry, I didn't get to mention that. But his PAB down 2 is actually a buff in Tag 2, because in T6, that move was launch punishable. Now in this game, it's only -12, which is huge. You'll eat a standing 4 at the most, and on counter hit, this move does juggle. So you can, on counter hit, it'll trip them, and then you can go for a juggle. So that was a buff when I found that out, I was spamming it during tournaments because they were trying to launch me, and then I get a punishment for them launching me. So that was a really, really good buff. So those are just some of his nerfs and buffs. But to answer your question, I think the real reason that people don't play Steve anymore in Tag 2 is because of the fact that Tag 2 is a completely different engine from T6. Even though it looks like T6, it doesn't play like T6. And in Tag 2, because of the sidewalk buffs, because of the crushing system, because of the damage output, those are the reasons why Steve was good in T6. He got great damage, unlike any character. Now every character in Tag 2 does great damage. Steve relies on heavy highs and mids, and now in Tag 2 you have a crush system that crushes under mids and jabs freely. Like it just happens. Like that's the way the game works, and that hurts Steve because he can't be aggressive. He can easily, be high crushed and then launched, even if he's in plus frames. So having a character like Steve, which is I would say is difficult. He's more technical now. You can't really press buttons. You have to know what you're doing. It's hard to play him in a game that requires so much defense and so many different things you have to look out for. But yeah, the crushing and the damage I think really hurt Steve. And he's like no other character. He's a character of his own. Like I compare him a little bit to Nina, where she's also a character I play. But Nina and Steve both they're characters that hit a lot in combos, and I feel like they don't have a lot of combo chemistry with a lot of other characters. So it makes it hard for these particular characters to really outshine other characters. And because of those factors, that's why I think Steve's not played too much in Tag 2.
Gotcha. All right, well, let's talk about the actually playing him a little bit. So now that you can't do that rush down, and he's not nearly as safe, for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned, the movement buffs and everything. So when you're going into a match, then you have Steve. I guess I should ask first. Do you think he's a point character, or is he better as the B option?
Oh, that's a good question. So my team is Steve and Lars. When I first started playing the team, my mentality was, all right, I'll put Steve first because if I do back two, I can call in Lars and I won't take away his red life if I do that tag assault combo. But I think Steve can be played both ways. He does. He's the only. I think he's that character where he has the ability to be on point or second point, and I don't think it really affects him. But
gotcha.
I personally, now that the game has came out further, I like to play him second because he comes in with rage and he just starts rampaging, doing the pitbulling that he used to do in T6 because people forget no one plays him anymore. So it's like, oh, how do I fight against Steve? How do I punish this and that? So I'd say play him second.
Gotcha. So okay, so let's say that you start a match, you have him as second. Now,
yep.
Let's tackle the normal non-rage version of him first. So he comes in, okay. You're just you manage to get into a neutral position, so you guys are just kind of dancing around. Now, since you can't play that old style of pitbull and frame traps and all of that. Sort of pressure. How do you approach your offense? Like how do you get in? What moves are you using? How do you revolve your game as the match goes on?
Okay, so when trying to come in on your opponent, that has a lot to do with movement. It has a lot to do with dashing in, throwing fakes, and hoping for your opponent to open up. And what I like to do is I'll dance around, try to open my opponent up, and then when they whiff, I would punish with a Sonic Fang or a forward 4-2. When that happens, now I'm in that zero zone. Steve wants to be in that zero zone. That means right up front with your opponent because that's when he's the best. So after looking for those whiff punishes, I'll go in, and when I get to zero range, I like to do 1-2-1 a lot. 1-2-1 is his kind of like his 3 jab combo, which is high, high, high. after 1-2-1, he can go into PAB stance by holding forward. And what that does is, so now I've entered my opponent's you know, zero field, and I go into PAB stance, and PAB stance is just a bunch of mix-ups. Really, really good mix-ups. I forgot to mention, but that's actually one of his buffs too. PAB stance is a lot better in Tag 2 than it was in T6. And I think Namco was trying to make that stance more usable because in T6, his flicker stance was more usable. So you want to enter PAB stance as soon as you can, and Steve is he has a bunch of safe moves like down forward 1, 1-2-1, down forward 2. These safe moves allow you to poke safely, and when your opponent attacks back, you can use his 3 and 4 sway to avoid the incoming attack, and you can go into, let's say, a 4, which is a right sway, into 1, which is a shoulder, and then when he connects with the shoulder, you can actually do sway 1-2, which is shoulder into a launch. That's a hit confirmable launch, but you don't have to go for the launch. You can just go for the shoulder, and when you go to the shoulder, you can hold forward and go into PAB stance again. So, I mean, you get the hint. So it's kind of like you want to enter PAB stance as much as you can from different transitions. So I guess learning the transitions that he can transition from is probably the best thing you could do with Steve, because it just allows him to mix up your opponent, get in, and kind of keep your opponent guessing.
Does a 1-2-1, does that jail on block, or can you duck any of those?
It jails.
It jails. Okay, good. So yeah, they kind of have to sit there and block, and then does
right. And
you
can actually finish the string too. You can do 1-2-1 2, which is a mid hit, or you could do 1-2-1 2 down 2, which is a low hit. So it kind of, so after you train your opponent to block 1-2-1, you can now like finish the combo, and sometimes they get hit with the 2 or the down 2, so it's a little mix up.
On block, if you go into PAB off of 1-2-1, does that give him frames? I know, like say Bruce, off of his down forward 4, he's actually, even though he has to go into the stance, he's actually at positive from it. Is that the same sort of deal with Steve if you go into PAB?
Okay, so I've messed around with it a lot. 1-2-1 on hit going into PAB is perfect, but on block, sometimes it's best just to go if on block. Sometimes I don't enter PAB stance because I feel like it lacks frame advantage. I don't know the frames, but I do know that if I do 1-2-1 on block and go into a PAB stance, I'll probably eat a launcher or a mid poke. So it's probably best just to hold back after 1-2-1. On hit though, for sure, after 1-2-1, you can just dog down your opponent. Like a simple thing that you could do with Steve is just do 1-2-1 on hit, enter PAB stance by holding forward, and then do down 1, which is that low poke. And after the low poke, you can actually do 12, which is a 10 frame grab in PAB stance, and that 10 frame grab after down forward, after you hit the low poke, you can't interrupt your opponent cannot do anything in between getting hit by the down forward 1 into the grab. So after they get hit with the down 1 from PAB stance, you grab, they can't do anything about it besides duck.
Can he does he just have the 1+2 grab out of PAB, or can he do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, this is only grab from PAB stance, but is a very, very, very good grab.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I just just because I pulled up the frame data real quick, it says that 1-2-1. If you go into either flicker or PAB, it's -1 on block, and then if you hit the 1-2-1, it says +5. So yeah, if you hit it, you're at a huge advantage.
Okay, yeah. So as you know, in Tag 2, well, you may not know this or anybody else, but in Tag 2, +1 isn't as effective as T6 +1. In this game, you could be at +8, and your opponent can just sidestep hop kick, So being in plus frames is a little bit different in Tag 2. So you want to be in high plus frames. If you're in like maybe +1, +2, it doesn't really. I don't really think it changed anything for the most part.
Gotcha. All right, well then let's since we're talking a lot about PAB, you've mentioned the one what is it, down forward 1-1-2-1. You've also mentioned the down 1. and then the grab. So outside of those, like walk us through that stance. Like what are his options? What are his mix-ups out of that?
Okay, so for me, when I'm in PAB stance, I usually always opt out for the low poke. Um, you also have PAB down two, which is his other low poke, which is -12 on block. PAB down two is a very seeable low. Is I feel like to the trained eye, it can be blocked on reaction every time. It's but I do catch it with people. It is unexpected, but again, to the trained eye, it can be blocked every time, and but it is good because of the frames. It does knock down on counter hit, like I mentioned, and you can go into a really really good juggle. But he also has his PAB two, which is probably one of his best PAB moves. PAB two is a tracking move. It's a high, I believe it's high. Yeah, it's high tracking. So you could also do like let's say PAB down one, and after that hits, you can go into a PAB two, and that'll catch your opponent. So if they try to sidewalk or do anything from PAB stance, the two will hit them, and it does have a crumple stun where you can get a free juggle afterwards. They can't break out of the crumple stun. So PAB two is really good. And for his mid pokes, he has his down forward 1-1 stuff, which is good for checking your opponent, making sure they don't do anything, like a hop kick or something. So you throw it down forward 1-1. It's delayable too, so it keeps your opponent kind of guessing what you're gonna do. Is he gonna finish it? Is he not gonna finish it? So you could do like something like down forward 1-1, and then go for a grab because they think the rest is coming. He also has. Oh, okay. So another I personally feel is a buff. His PAB 1-2. So that's his 1-2 jab. I looked up the frames on it, and PAB 1-2 is 0 on block, which is really good because as soon as I played Tag 2 and I did that move, I was like, PAB 1-2 is really, really quick. It's almost like it doesn't have any, like, it doesn't feel like there's any, like, I want to say lag, but lag isn't the right word. Like, disadvantage. Like, he moves really quick and swift after 1-2. And sure enough, it got buffed. It's a lot quicker. I think it's 13 frames or 12 frames on startup, but it's really really quick. It is good for poking and locking down your opponent. You could also do 1-2-1, which is the delayable hit afterwards, which is mid, and it stops your opponent from attacking as well. Um, these are he has many tools. He also has PAB forward two and back two. I don't really use those two much, but they actually got better in this game. In T6, they were his new moves that they gave him. Like in T6 BR, he got PAB forward two and back, but they weren't that good. They didn't stand out to me. But in Tag two, you can do his forward two, PAB forward two. That move actually slightly low crushes and high crushes, and it gives you a wall splat. So that's really good. But it's not a go-to move with Steve. But if you play Steve at a high level, you want to start experimenting with a lot of his moves because I think they definitely did a good job with making sure that every move that he has is usable. Unlike T6, where you kind of always went for that forward forward two, you always went for that down forward two. So they kind of made him a character where you have to use his other moves to be good with him.
Well, it sounds like just to make sure that I'm hearing you right. It sounds like for you, when you get into PAB, you like to poke a lot. You don't like to go for like the big heavy hitter. It's all about keeping the frames, keeping the pressure, and then just ticking away.
Right. Oh, I forgot to mention the big one, which is funny that I didn't mention it, but PAB up forward two, which is that big uppercut he does. It's launch punishable. It does high crush. It does high crush and low crush. So let's say that I do PAB 1-2, which is two jabs, 0 on block. If I do the right read, if my opponent tries going for like a jab punishment, I could do up forward two and high crush them into a combo. So that's actually up forward two is really really good too if you plan it right.
Gotcha. So do you find yourself doing that a lot, like trying to set somebody up for that, or is it just like a consequence of you seeing that they're going to press buttons?
It depends a lot on my opponent because if I'm playing someone who is solid on punishment, someone who is, very laid back and doesn't really press buttons, then I most likely won't do it because I don't need to do
Sure.
it. But if I play against someone who's in my face and they're just pressing a lot of buttons, I'm not sure how to react. It's just throwing me off. I definitely throw it because throw it out there. You never know if they block it. Sometimes they won't be punished because it is one of those moves that's hard to be punished. So for me, it definitely depends on my opponent, but I will use it if I'm not being respected. Absolutely.
So now, PAB, as you mentioned, a couple times, it's one of those things where Steve, just in general, he wants to be at range 0. He wants to be in your face, and
Right.
PAB is designed for that. Now, you mentioned a few things for getting in. You said that for your style, you like to move around, watch for the whiff punish, and then go from there. Now, let's say that you go up against a high level player who's got really solid defense, very good movement, and they know that if they keep you out, their risk or the chances of you doing big damage or putting on that pressure is going to be pretty small. What do you do about that? Like, what's your what sorts of tools does he have to get in without waiting for that whiff punish?
That's a really, really good question because I actually thought about that question a lot myself, being a Steve player, and that's probably Steve's worst nightmare, playing someone who keeps Steve out from getting in, and they're super good at blocking, and they just turtle Steve out. And when that happens, Steve doesn't have a lot of tools, and I think this is where Steve becomes this is one of his weak sides. He can't really come in and poke you, without doing something risky. So from mid range, Steve does have 3+4, which is his albatross spin, and he can go into 34-2, which is a mid where he spins and goes into a mid punch, and then he has albatross down 2, which is a spin into a low punch. Um, those are really good tools from kind of bringing himself forward and into your face. He can also cancel the albatross spin and just hold forward. He'll enter PAB stance. So he did a fake whiff and entered your face, and got in 0 range, which is a nice little trick. But yeah, that's probably the hardest thing to do with Steve is get into someone's 0 range when they're backdashing and getting away from you. But yeah, what I do is I'll do albatross sometimes. Um, I'll do a lot of forward and back spacing, and what that does is it makes my opponent very uncomfortable, and they have to start thinking about, oh, is he too close? Is he too close? So it's almost like an aggression game. So I like to call it like a pit bull defense
Mhm.
style, where I'm applying enough pressure to make my opponent uncomfortable because I'm like a little too close to them,
Mhm.
but it's enough for me to be able to block what they're throwing out. So when I do that, it makes them want to open up and press buttons. And that's what you want to do with Steve. You want your opponent to press buttons because if they don't, you can't counter hit them. And he's designed to counter hit. He's looking for those back ones. He's looking for those down forward twos. He's looking for anything that can give him an advantage or a knockdown, so he can get in your face or push you to the wall. So yeah, just try to bait out a lot. Again, don't rush them down if they won't go for it. But if you sometimes you just have to play that turtle game and just wait them out. You could backdash as well. So it's not like you always have to go forward. Steve, you could definitely play a defensive game with Steve, and I think in tag two he's more defense than he ever was. So yeah,
Gotcha.
so that's how I would do that.
I do have a, kind of to move us into the next section because you did mention something that I definitely want to talk about because you mentioned earlier how he's such a wall beast, and then just now you mentioned how he's all about you just being patient, waiting until you get your opportunity, and then do wall carry, whatever. So I actually have two
Yeah.
questions. One, before we get into the big wall beast game that he has, how good is his wall carry? Like what sorts of things are you doing to get people to the wall?
Okay, so Steve has really good wall carry. Because he has good wall carry, he's good at taking red life. So if you have like a Mishima and you let's say you do electric and you tag in Steve, he could do something like down forward 1-2-1. Uh, you can you can hold back and do flicker 1, and then you could do forward 2-1. Uh, After forward 2-1, you want to hold back into flicker 1, and then right when flicker 1 hit 34, which is albatross 2, or that's like really really damaging red life. But that also wall carries as well. So instead of ending it with albatross 2, you could just do duck 1, which is his forward 3-1, and he dashes forward and pops you up, and that just lands you perfectly on the wall. So not only do you lose all that red life, now he gets to juggle you at the wall for even more red life. So I definitely think that's where he shines: carry and wall damage.
Gotcha.
So
Okay, so once you get him to the wall, then like, what's the scariness? Like, walk us through like where he's getting all of his damage and like his options.
okay, so let's say for example, you bring your opponent to the wall. You do your damage, tag assault, whatever, whatever, and then your opponent is left on the floor, and they could tag assault, they can tag crash, they can tag out, they can swap the characters out, they can tech. They have options, but let's say if they tech, right? Steve now is in your face after you tech, and your back's against the wall. So now he can either do quarter circle 1, which is I think his one of his best tools. It's a safe wall splat, and he can hold back to enter flicker stance from there if your opponent decides to block quarter circle 1. So after they can block it, you can do another mix up. So that's how kind of Steve is. Like, he does something, depending on it, if it hits or if they block it, you can go into something else. So he just keeps on going. He's like a train, and he just never stops. So people get frustrated. But back to what I was saying. At the wall, you can do a quarter circle 1 on hit. Your opponent's wall splats, and then you could backdash and do a 3-1-1, which hits them for more damage, and then they re-wall splat again, and then from there you can go into depending on who you have as a secondary. It depends on what you do from here. So like you could forward 2 bound if you want to do a 1-hit wall splat, and then tagging whoever you use, or you could do down 2-1-2, which is another 1-hit wall splat. Um, but the thing is, the problem that people have against Steve at the wall is that he constantly makes you guess on whether to block low or block, high or mid, and that 50-50 at the wall is just deadly both ways. Even let's say if you go for instead of a quarter circle 1, you could do a wall push. You know, they can't block that. So they'll have to duck it or break it. And then from a wall push, you can go into when you wall push it with Steve. Um, I'll get into breaking down the wall push a little bit more because I think it's a really really good quality that Steve has. But you can wall push into some damage and then go into a wall splat or another mix up. And then for lows, he has down back 2, which is launch punishable and block, but the knockdown on down back 2 is really effed up, like especially at the wall, because if you get hit with down back 2, you have to eat another down back 2, and if your opponent thinks they can get up or tries to get up, then it just f's up everything even more, because once they try to get up, the down back 2 will knock them back down the same way it did with the first one, and then you just keep doing down back 2s at the wall and they can't get out of it. But so they have to. So the trick is you get hit with one down back 2, you eat the second one, and you tech off the second one. So that was really messed up. He has his down back 3-2, which I don't really use too much anymore because it doesn't have any reward like it did in T6. Um, down back 3-2 in open space, you can get a free albatross down 2, and if your opponent tries a quick stand, the albatross down 2 and knock them down again, and then you can hit them again with maybe like let's say a down 12 or a down back 2. So that's why Steve is so deadly at the wall, because he's consistently knocking you down to the wall or to the floor, and both ways really really hurt the opponent, and it's almost unseeable. Like I would say it's unseeable. You have to guess. Um, rule of thumb, you'd always want to kind of stand up and block. Always want to block mid against Steve, because especially at the wall, because you don't want to eat that wall splat. It's so damaging. Um, so the wall pressure is just tremendous from Steve, and he doesn't even have to wall splat. He could just keep attacking you. We talked about earlier. Steve's main game is to get zero range, and at the wall, your opponent can't move. They have to eat the mix-ups. They have to eat the PAB stances. They have to eat the flicker stances, and they can't get away. So that's why it's so good.
Now, I did want to ask sort of more of my own curiosity, because I notice when I watch Steve's, you mentioned the wall carry earlier, how a lot of times you can end with the forward 3-1 to kind of pop them up into the wall. Now, I notice like his actual wall juggle, a lot of people doing stuff that the bound actually comes from the wall standing 1-2.
Yeah, right.
Now, how did it? Because it's very confusing when I watch it, because sometimes it looks like they're doing instant wall standing 1-2. Other times it looks like it's coming out of a stance. Let's say let's just take like a standard wall juggle. You haven't bounded yet. You're just carrying them, and you get a decent wall splat with a 4-3-1. Now, at that point, what do you do? Like, what's the standard? And you can use, since you have Lars as your partner. I mean, you can use Lars as an example if you want to. Okay. But what do you normally do if you get that situation?
Wait. So you're saying if I wall splat my opponent perfectly, what would I do afterwards?
Yeah, let's say your typical situation that you run into. Either you get a forward 2-1 into the wall with a good wall splat that you can bound off of, or you mentioned how you can pop them up with forward 3-1. Okay. Either one of those. What's your standard bread and butter at the wall?
Okay, so because Lars has such a great filler, mm-hmm. I usually do a one hit bound, which allows me to really get in a lot of hits with Lars, and then I can end it with Steve's Sonic Fang. So what I would do would be, so I pop him up at the wall. Steve would come in, and he would do his down two. The notation is down two squiggly 1-2. Yeah, I don't know how to say it, but
yeah, that's okay. I think you're the first person I've heard to say
squiggly. Yeah. But you know what I mean, right?
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
So it's actually, that move is actually 2 hits to a bound, but I think because it's so quick, sometimes the system counts it as 1. But that's his most damaging one hit bound. Beside, 4-4-2 is another bound, but that's what I use because it's the most damaging. And then when I do that, I call in Lars. I'll do 12, which he spins around, and then you cancel the 12 by holding back, and then you press forward 1-2-1, which is his new addition, bread and butter against the wall. And after all those hits, Steve ends it with one big power hit, which is a Sonic Fang. And then from there, I mean, most likely your opponent is gonna, try to tag in their second character. A lot of people in this game like to people are getting smarter. The game's been out for a while, so it's like, why am I just gonna get up? Why eat the mix up when I could just press 5? When I could just tag in my second character, and if it's at the right angle, they'll jump down from a farther location, so you can't really punish them. And I think that hurts Steve a lot because he can't go for his 50-50s anymore at the wall, because it's too easy for your opponent just to tag or tag crash. Yeah, so he can. I know that if you read the tag in, you can Sonic Fang, and the Sonic Fang will kind of wall splat the second character that comes in, and you can reset the juggle and go again. But that's a typical bread and butter at the wall.
All right. Well, let's then. You mentioned how he has a bunch of stuff, or I should say, I don't know, like options, mind games off of the wall push. Yep. So kind of walk us through that. Like, what can you do off the wall push, and how does that work?
Okay, so the wall push is very, very effective. I don't think a lot of Steve players know how good it is, but you want to use it because So this is how it works. Steve can do back 12, and he chooses his direction where he wants to push you, whether it's up, left, down, right. And typically, let's say if I push you towards the wall straight on, I can do any 10 frame jab combo. So I could do 1-1-2, which will be natural after the wall push. I could do 2-1, which would be natural after the wall push. So I'm going to take one of those scenarios. Let's say 1-1-2, right? So wall push, 1-1-2, I'm at +1. Um, I can now go into, let's say, a down forward 1 with Steve. And after that down forward 1, whether it's on hit or block, I can now press down forward 1, back 3. So he enters that back stance again, and I can wall push you again. And then after I wall push you, I can do something like 1-2, which is a 10 frame jab, right? 1-2. After on hit, because it's guaranteed after the wall push, uh, after 1-2, you can now transition back again and forward wall push again. And so it's almost like a little trap that your opponent can't really get out of. It's really, really hard and frustrating. But he can also, when he goes back for a wall push, he doesn't have to wall push all the time. He can actually go back and hit 1, which is a mid overhead hit. And that's for people who get scared and want to duck because they can't get around the wall pushes. But that's a typical straight on wall push for Steve. But it gets even better because if you wall push from okay, let's see, a 180 angle, so that means my back's against the wall, and I completely turn you around and push you to the wall, I get enough time to do quarter circle 1, which is, I don't know the frames on that, but that's probably like maybe 16 frames or something. So I now get a free wall splat from a 180 angle, and from quarter circle 1, you can then backdash 3-1-1, re-wall splat, go into my bread and butter, which I just talked about, and that's off a grab, and that's just deadly. That's deadly.
Yeah, well, I know that ever since they changed from T4 and they took out the universal wall push, I knew that a lot of Steve players love the fact that he still has it because I mean, you're in a game where movement is everything and positioning it means so much, and you have the option to move them wherever you want to.
Yeah, right.
It's a huge advantage. And looking at the frame data, it says quarter circle forward 1 is 16 frames. So yeah, you get plus 16 off of that, which is crazy.
Insane, right? And I actually want to add something. So it's not just a 180 wall push, right? I think anything 90 and above can opt out for a 16 frame Punisher. So if my right side is at the wall and my opponent's in front of me, I can wall push them to the right, and when they hit the wall, I can do quarter circle 1 also. So it's 90 frames to and up. Anything under that 90 angle has to you have to do 1-1-2 or a 10 frame Punisher.
Gotcha. Now, do you, when you're at the wall, whether your back is towards it or whatever, do you are you strictly doing the wall push and then mixing it up with like a mid, or do you or mid or low, or do you actually throw in his other grabs on occasion too?
If I wall push my opponent, I'll get my free damage. I usually don't like to throw away my free damage, and if I do throw away my free damage, I'll probably go for like a down back 3-2 just to get a little bit more damage. But I usually always do after a wall push, I'll always go for like I'll sometimes throw away 1-1-2 and go for a 1-2 because 1-2 has a back sway transition where it's like he could just go into it again, and so it's almost like a reset. So I'll usually do the 1-2 wall push 1-2, and let's say if I don't want to sway back, I'll go for a mid just to check my opponent from ducking, and then from the down forward 1, he can also sway back again and do it again. So it's also a nice transition. So learning these little transitions really, really helps out to define your Steve and make it one of the best out there. So definitely learn the transitions.
Gotcha. So the wall push itself, you can break that, right?
Yeah, it used to be it was weird because during DR days, I think it was a one break, but now it's they changed it a lot. But I think now in tag it's a 12 break. Tag two is a 12 break. Yep.
Now, let's say that you run into, one of those players, again, who's good at defense, but you somehow gotten against the wall or, in that wall situation. Now, you know that they're looking for the wall push. They're going to break it.
Yep.
Now, rather than doing the wall push, do you mix it up with other moves like lows and whatnot, or do you try to throw in a different grab just to mess with them, or how do you usually do that?
Okay, so if I have my opponent against the wall, I think I want to clarify that the wall push is more of like a bonus. It's not something you want to go to all the time. It's just that thing to throw your opponent off from holding back all the time. Because a lot of people just hold back because it's like Steve doesn't have any scary lows or unseeable lows. Let me just hold back all the time, and that wall push throws them off guard. They're like, "Whoa, I was holding back." It kind of you go in and you start attacking, and they're like, "What the hell's going on here?" So the wall push is just a bonus. If you have your opponent against the wall, you probably 80, I want to say 75% of the time, I always go for quarter circle one. It's a safe wall splat that, I can go into flicker stance after and, do something else. Like, let's say if I do quarter circle one, they block my mid wall splat. I hold back, go into flicker stance, and then I can hit 4-2, which is a sway right into a mid punch, which is also a wall splat, or you can sway left and go into 3-1-1, which is another mid wall splat. So it's like these transitions start to become very confusing for the opponent or someone that doesn't know the matchup. So 75% of the time I'll go into that mid wall spot. You get the most damage output. It's safe. It's the go-to move. If your opponent is blocking those and you want to kind of throw them off the guard, you can even do a quarter circle one. They block it and then go into a wall push, or a down back 3-2 if they don't like to block low, down back 2 if they don't like to block low, or you can even play it safe. You can even play it safe and go into a down 1. I think down 1 is probably Steve's best low poke, and it's pretty safe. I think it's only -10 or -11, so you only eat a kick to the face. Yeah, and it's super effective because it leaves him in full crouch, and he can go into his after down 1. You can go into your full crouch down forward 1, which is that new PAB down 1 move that we talked about, or you can go into like while standing 1, and then from there do some other stuff. So he definitely has the lockdown tools at the wall. It's up to you as a player to kind of keep your opponent on their toes. I think if you use like 10 moves with Steve, you're not going to get far. You have to mix it up. Definitely use all his tools. They're very effective, and it'll just confuse the hell out of your opponent.
Gotcha. So it's just all about making those reads and
yeah, because he's not a character that you can play. You can play him turtle style, but he doesn't have the pokes. He doesn't have the punishment for that. So that's not where he shines. He shines at the wall. He shines in your opponent's face. He's more of like an unexpected character. You have to do tools that your opponent hasn't seen, and you can definitely. I know he has one grab that he can tag off of, which I thought was pretty cool. He has a grab that it's quarter circle back 2+4, and he grabs you and he kind of lunges his shoulder in your face. And when he does that, you can tag in your second character. So that's a nice taggable move that I found out about. Just something to mix it up with. Stuff like that you have to think about all the time. You have to keep your opponent on your toes.
Gotcha. Now that actually does remind me. I wanted to ask just kind of generalized or generally speaking. We've talked about his peekaboo grab and then wall push, but he has the grab that you just mentioned, the quarter circle back 2 grab that you can tag off of. But his normal grabs, or I guess if there's any others that I'm not thinking of, like are they okay? I know that is like his normal 2 grab. I know that leaves him with some pretty good Oki options off of that. Now, how do you see his regular grabs? Are you grabbing all that much?
Yeah, absolutely. So his one grab, 1+3, Yeah, it's not. It's a grab, but you don't really get any Oki afterwards because he kind of what he does is he grabs you, punches you in the gut, and then tosses you away, so you lose your Oki. But his two grab, like you mentioned, what he does is he hits you on top of your head and knocks you right in front of him, and from there you can do a Sonic Fang if your opponent tries to do a get up three or tries a quick stand. And Sonic Fang, this is like just the typical Oki for a Steve player. He'll do a two grab into a Sonic Fang if the opponent gets up. But 9 times out of 10, your opponent, unless if they really respect you and they know the mix up, they tend to stay on the floor just because the position seems a little funny. It's like tempting you to do something. So a lot of players just usually side roll, and if they side roll, you can do a down back two and hit them off the floor. So that's his Oki. Quick stand, Sonic Fang, side roll, down back two. His forward forward 12 grab is another move that's really good. Another grab that's really good. It's really, really quick. It's sometimes unseeable. It's unexpected. He gets Oki just like he does with the two grab. Sonic Fang, down back two. And then what else does he have? I guess he's not. Yeah, he doesn't have a lot of grabs. That's all he really has. Yeah, those are everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we already, the big ones we already talked about, the PAB 1+2, and then his wall push, of course. But yeah, I just was curious. I didn't think things had changed much.
Actually, to add to that, his PAB grab, he doesn't get too much Oki off of it because he leaves you kind of far. But the one Oki that I found is that because he leaves you far away, most times your opponent wants to just roll away because they think they're safe. But if you actually run in after you do the grab, while they're rolling back, you can Sonic Fang them and catch their back while they're getting up. So definitely keep in mind that after PAB 2, PAB 12, your opponent's most likely going to roll back because they think they're safe.
All right, yeah, I just wanted to talk about that quick, make sure we didn't ignore it.
Yep.
Oh,
definitely.
God, I did have another question along those lines. I can't remember what it was.
I can throw in something there, give you some time to think.
Yeah, go for it. Because I had a specific question. I completely
yeah. So Steve is not really a poking character. He doesn't have a lot of low moves that are not that negative on block, because I keep mentioning this down back two, right? But down back two is launch punishable. It's I think exactly -15, and for a move that really doesn't give you too much reward. I mean, it does knock down, so I can understand why it's launch punishable. But down back two is a good move, but it is launch punishable. His albatross down two, which is where he spins and knocks your legs out. That move is actually launch punishable as well. I think it's exactly -15. So these are moves that are kind of that don't really do much, but all they do is really give Steve momentum. But they are very negative, and it's hard to throw them out there when your opponent's looking out for them, and then they end up launching you off of a move that I feel like you don't really get too much reward of. So just be careful when you use those two moves. His down one, if you want to low poke with Steve and you want to kind of get in your opponent's head, you always want to do down one. Down one is probably the best low move that Steve has. He also has down 2-1, which is a really good range low poke that comes into a mid. And the only problem with that move is that after you do down 2-1, so you poke them low, you poke the mid, and then after that, you can do another two, which is a high attack, but most likely everyone's going to duck that last two. So what you want to do is do the down 2-1 and then duck cancel, and that'll leave you completely safe from your opponent's incoming attack. But the thing is, it's almost like you're at a disadvantage after that move because your opponent can now mix you up between a low poke or a mid attack. So when you duck cancel, you can duck cancel to the mid or duck cancel and parry, but it's like a low poke that you have to eat the mix up afterwards, and it's really not that good of a move because of that. But I mean, you can always block. And that's the thing that I remind myself as a Steve player. I don't have to keep attacking. I could just do something and block. And just knowing that Steve can block, you can prevent yourself from getting into so much trouble by attacking all the time and getting launched and stuff like that. So, slow it down sometimes with Steve, get in your opponent's head, but be careful of those whiff punishments and punishments in general.
I I did remember my question. I wanted to ask because you had mentioned earlier that he's still a big counter hit character. So I wanted to ask kind of a dual question. One, what are his panic buttons, and then also like what are his big counter hit tools? I know back one
Oh God,
is the one that everyone knows.
yeah.
But in addition to that, like what else does he have, or what else do you have to look out for? Or as a Steve player, what should you be setting up? What moves are you trying to hit?
Okay, so back one, everyone knows back one is the notorious back one, but back one is, for those who don't know, is a 13 frame high that's safe, and if you hit your
Stuffs everything.
yeah, right. So it's so quick, and it's actually one of Steve's best launchers because of he gets maximum damage off of that too. So it's like it's just deadly in every way. But he also has so back one all day. You can even whiff back one because it's so safe sometimes. But I mean, against the good opponents, they'll catch you sometimes. But so back one also has a what makes back one safe is because when you do back one, you can hold back one. You can hold back, and you enter flicker stance, and flicker stance has like an auto guard on it. So you could just hold back into flicker or even go into flicker mix-ups afterwards if your opponent tries attacking. And his other go-to move, I think, if you're kind of taking a lot of hits, you don't know how to block. It's a panic attack move. I would do back two. Back two is has high crush properties, and even sometimes mid. Like he goes back in a weird form, and he'll clip you, and he can get a tag assault combo. It's see the thing about back two is that even though it's a buff, it almost sometimes can hurt you early on in the game because if you do back two, you're forced to go into 4-4-2 bound, and when you do 4-4-2 bound, you tag in my second character Lars. I'm now giving you all this red life that you can recover because I had to bound early, and even though it's a buff, it's almost not a buff in a way because of the fact that he has to tag assault so early. And to even get damage off a back two, you have to tag assault. So not only do you give your opponent all this red life that they can recover, but you also give your opponent, your opponent's second character, rage. And as we know, rage in this game is devastating. Like comebacks can happen so quickly. Three hits in rage, you could be almost nearly dead. So you almost want to always avoid giving your opponent rage. So back to his
I'm glad that you bring that up because real quick, I wanted to ask, just as a Steve player, you mentioned earlier how deadly he is when he has rage. Now, if you
yeah.
get in a situation like that where you have the option to tag assault to go, try to get your max damage, if you're in rage as the Steve player, do you usually forego that? Just ignore it. I'm in rage. I don't care. I'm not doing tag assault. I want to make the most of that rage.
Yeah, I think that could go for any character in the game. If you have there's it might sometimes you're in situations where you feel like you should attack assault, but if you have rage, you should always keep your rage, and the reason is because if you have rage, most likely it's because your first character took a lot of damage, and they're trying to recover their red life. That's why you have a rage character in the game. So if you tag in your second character when you have rage, you toss away all your red life that your second character was recovering to have them come out and do damage. So if you have rage, just use your character and do a max damage solo combo. And even though it might not be the max damage, it's in the long term, it's going to help you out because you gain that red life that your second character needs, and keep your rage. So you go for the Oki, go for the mix up, get some more damage in.
Gotcha. Okay. Sorry to kind of derail your
No, that's a
the
good
tag
point.
assault topic, but yeah, I'm sorry. I sounded like you kind of had more to say on that. So with the tag
Yeah, no, I'm
assaulting.
glad you brought that up. That's a really, really good point. But yeah, I think that was just like general for you know, everybody. And like another thing too is I think these. So what I just said before, I think people should incorporate in the game a lot more often. And then the next one is early on if you launch. Let's say if I launch it with Steve with back one, I don't have to go into back one, call in Lars, do this crazy ass damage, and it's all for nothing because I give my opponent rage and a bunch of red life, and all they have to do is get a free tag, and then they start healing, and they come in and mess me up with all this rage. So if you start a combo off early on, just do a solo combo, get your damage in, and then you'll leave your opponent with maybe a little more than half, and then they don't have rage. They can't just tag crash. They can't just get out of the battlefield. So what you can now do is kind of apply that pressure, make them want to tag, hurt their second character, or go in and if you catch them with another launcher, and you have enough to kill them if you if you tag assault. So right then and then you can kill them with your tag assault. So definitely start the match with a solo combo if you can, because it's just gonna hurt you long term.
Gotcha. Well, God, I'm kind of running out of questions here. I think we're getting towards the tail end of discussions. I did want to ask, just kind of generally speaking, obviously this is a tag game, so
Yep.
the tag mechanics are pretty important. So just in general, you play Lars. Now,
Yep.
who are the best characters that you think, to pair him up? Like, who complements Steve, or what kinds of characters complement Steve the best?
Okay, so I put a lot of thought into this because Steve is my main. I love the character, and I was just looking for the most damaging, uh, you know, combos in the game. Right? So, uh, I don't. It's really hard when it comes to Steve because he's so unique, and he doesn't really. I don't feel like he complements any other characters. I feel like there might be a few characters that complement him, but the reason why I picked Lars is because Lars complements everyone, and I don't. The Steve Lars team is pretty good, but I don't think it's Steve's best character he can match up with. I know I thought about a couple, and I'll name the ones that I thought about. I can't really elaborate, but just to throw it out there, I think Steve and Murdoch is a very, very popular team, and I think there's something about Murdoch that just helps Steve out and just complements his gameplay. Another team I saw was the team I actually want to pick up is the team that Nee played, which was Steve and Brian. I seen some ridiculous stuff from them, and Brian compliments Steve a lot because he has at the wall he has a one hit bound that's really hard. So like forward forward four, one hit bound, back one, which is a one hit bound. And when you do a one hit bound with Steve, he can go into as a filler he can do quarter circle one, which is his mid wall splat that's really, really good. And he can hold back into flicker. And when he enters flicker, you could do 1-1-1-2, which is like a bunch of punches. And after all that, Brian can come in for a really powerful hit. So I think that's his most damaging stuff. If you can find a character that that has a one hit bound that hurts, so Steve can come in and do his filler, and then you can optimize the maximum damage. Another team, I know Nin plays Steven Murdoch. Another team I know that people are talking about is maybe Steve and JC. I don't know how good that team is, but it's definitely a possibility. Another team would be, I think. Okay, so I think this is a really good team as well. So Steve and Dragonov. I know that Dragonov has a move that kind of. So after Steve does back two, he does 4-4-2 bound, and the problem with that is it leaves your opponent in this weird
face down
face
thing.
down,
Yeah.
in the air kind of thing, and it's hard to turn your opponent around so you can maximize damage. So Dragunov has this two-hit move that uh, just turns them around perfectly so Steve can go in for damage. So I know Dragunov is a good compliment for Steve. I asked JDCR the same question because I was roaming with him at what was it? Some tournament. I forget which tournament it was. But, yeah, so many tournaments you forget. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was actually rooming with JDCR, and I was like, man, I'm so frustrated with Steve. I can't really find a good team for him. I feel like no one compliments him. Who do you think's a good team for Steve in general? And he told me to play Steve and Jack. I thought he was crazy for saying that, but I really don't know. I got to test the team out. I got to see how it is. But Jack does have a forward one bound, so that's a one hit bound move. I know there is a that plays Jack and Steve, but I gotta look into that team. That's one of the teams I would mess with.
Did he mention why he thought that?
No, he So you can't.
Just like, hey, play Jack.
Yeah, right. So I'm assuming that he plays a lot of people, and that's probably one of the teams that he saw that was really really good. He doesn't play Steve personally, so he couldn't really tell me any details. He couldn't elaborate on why, but he just said to me that that was a good team, and from who he's faced and who he played. So yeah.
Interesting. I'm wondering if
Jack Steve.
I'm wondering if maybe because of like the forward one pressure and the poking and down back ones, like Jack, it seems it's slow, but he's pretty good at maneuvering his opponent wherever he wants them to be.
Yeah.
As long as you play good defense. So I don't know. Maybe that's why he's good at positioning your opponent into the corner, and then once Steve comes in, he can run his game. Interesting. That'll be yeah. If you test that out, we'll have to keep an eye on it, see what happens.
Yeah. Well, the thing about Steve is that it's hard for him to launch. Mm-hmm. Now that may sound silly because he has back one, but the thing about back one is it's high. And in T6 that was fine, but in Tag 2, in my own opinion, I feel like Tag 2 has a lot of crushing, and everything's been tweaked. Everything that may have seemed simple is just tweaked in Tag 2, and back one is not as effective as it was in T6 because everyone can high crush now. Everything high crushes, and because of that, that definitely hurts his game in general. So if you're going to team up with Steve, you want a character that can launch easily because you launch and you tag in Steve for the damage. Steve definitely has the damage output. So like I know Nee was doing Kaz and Steve. So like you put Kaz on point, electric calling Steve, and you take tremendous red life. And if you put him to the wall, you take even more. So I think you want to, when thinking of a team to work with Steve and anybody, think of someone who can launch really really easily.
Well, yeah, and that's you started the episode off saying that how you typically put him second, and then not only can you get the red life like you just mentioned, but if he's rage,
definitely.
It's like crazy damage. So
yep.
Yeah, and I know you're definitely not the only one with that opinion of the whole crushing. I've heard from a lot of players, especially kind of older players who've been around for a while, saying how they're just noticing mids are just getting crushed all over the place.
Yeah, you can't check your opponent with that down forward one anymore because even if you like the sidestepping is insane. It's like you can get around everything in this game.
Well, that's as far as Steve goes. I think I have run out of my questions, of my newbie questions. So if there's anything that we didn't talk about with him that you think is important that should be mentioned, by all means, the mic is yours.
Okay, so I just want to generalize Steve for everyone that's listening. Steve is a really really good character. He's not a character that you can just pick up and play and be good with. It definitely takes time, and you have to learn all his different mix-ups and his transitions. And the more you play with him, the better it gets. And Steve can even though he doesn't, it's going to be hard for you as a player to, you might get frustrated and you might just give up on Steve, but just keep playing and watch videos. You know, just look up threads and read about Steve, and he can be effective if used correctly. He can be effective if you have the patience. He is a good character. He is high on tier list for a reason in Korea, so definitely give him the time. And Steve, as a character, he can be a pitbull, but you can also play him defensively. His Sonic Fang does wall splat, so it's a 14 frame Punisher, and it's one of the longest range Punishers. So let's say if Hiachi does 442, on block you can actually punish with Sonic Fang. And I know when I was playing one of my matches with Nina, I couldn't really punish that 442, and I was thinking, damn, I wish I had Steve because Steve can consistently punish Hiachi with 442. So yeah, if you're a Steve player and you wanna get better with Steve, just keep reading, watch videos, learn setups, and he'll get you far if you put in the right amount of work.
Excellent. Well, I think that's a good conclusion for the Steve part of the episode. So I think we can put a cap on that. I did want to ask, just kind of to lead into the final segment of the episode because you brought it up a little bit, Tekken Revolution. When the last episode, it hadn't come out yet. So when we had recorded the episode, so we didn't get a chance to talk about it. Now I do want to. Have you been messing with it a whole lot, or did you just like play a few matches, or?
I play it all the time. I love it.
Nice. Okay. Well, great. That was actually going to be my question. How you liked it so far? So what are the big things that you're liking about it?
Okay, so what turns me on to Tekken Revolution is the fact that I feel like it turned into a more of a poking game instead of a launch frenzy. So like when you play Tekken Revolution, you're gonna notice right off the bat that you cannot bound. Bound has been taken away from the game. So what that does is that limits you to a smaller juggle and less damaging juggle. And so when I play online, I noticed that it's mostly like poking and kind of looking for that Punisher, and it turns into like a more of a what I feel like Tekken should be. Punishment, movement, poking. They did throw in invincible moves, which is I think well done. It's a move that it's kind of like a panic move where you don't want to eat a mix up. And if you know Tekken's full of mix ups. So when that mix up comes, you just if you're playing Lars, you can do down back 12 and he'll go invincible for a second, and then he can hit you with a move. But if you bait out that invincible move is launch punishable. So every move that's invincible in Tekken Revolution is launch punishable. So you can bait them out. I think it's fair that way. But in general, I think the game is really, really good. Besides of the stats, I think the stats were just implemented to kind of give the game a longer life cycle, kind of keep people interested. I don't think it's if they do come out with a real game, I don't think they'll continue doing that. It's just to keep people into it for right now until they release something bigger in the future.
Yep, I completely agree with that, and that's part of the reason that I wanted to talk about it a little bit because a lot of what you just said is exactly what I've noticed with it. I like it a lot. I'm a huge opponent of the bound system. I'm not a fan of that system at all, and I like that they removed it. I just think it adds, like you said, the poking game. I think it adds a lot more to the Oki and whatnot, and just for a variety of reasons. I'm glad that they took that out. But the game in general and the implementation of it, I think you're dead on. I think that the stats thing is just to kind of get people to keep playing it, especially those people who don't play Tekken.
Right.
Or
yep.
don't have Tekken Tag, keep them playing it, and then when a new one comes out, I'm going to get the new one. But just looking at what they've done with it, it really feels like the blueprint for what I think they might do for the next Tekken. And to be honest with you, I don't know if I would necessarily be all that opposed to it. I think it might be a good idea because, speaking from a Tekken player, I would much rather download a free-to-play game and then purchase the characters that I want for a much cheaper price than, because I'm sure they would have like a package or something, where like $20-$30 gets you all the characters. And then, they'll have a ton of DLC for the people who want it, like, all the costumes and all that stuff. But like for us, for the hardcore players, we would end up, if they were to go that route, I think that it would be cheaper for us and we'd have more competition because all these people are able to play the game without actually paying for it. But I don't know. I think that's a model that they're messing with right now and seeing how it goes. And I fully expect that we're going to see a lot more content drop for Tekken Revolution here in the future.
Absolutely. I don't know if you noticed, but they just announced that there's going to be an update. I think it's today or either tomorrow where they're going to include Jin and Zhao Yu as playable characters.
Yes, I did hear about that. Yeah, and I'm sure everyone eventually will get into, or at least most of the cast will get into it. But I don't know. Like if they were to do it properly, for my own opinion and the way that I would prefer it to be, I was a little put off by the way that they released Tekken Tag 2, because in order to at least here. In order to get all of the characters, you had to pre-order it through GameStop.
Oh, right, I remember.
And I hate GameStop with a passion. I hate that company. So I was very, very pissed off that I had to do that. When the game first came out, I played Ancient Ogre right out the gates. And
cool.
That was the only way that I could play him is to get the game through them.
I have to deal with people you hate.
Yeah, exactly. So I was not a big fan of that, but like even just generally speaking, like if they were to put out a free to play game, and like I said, kind of like all these other like PC games that you have out there, download the free to play game, and then you have all these different DLCs, and I'm sure that they would offer like a seasons pass or something that would get you all the characters for $25-$30 probably. So you're paying half as a competitor. You're paying half the price for everything that you want out of the game, and then if you want to, you can buy all this little extra stuff that you don't need, but that you can get. So I don't know. I think like it's an interesting concept, and I think it could work if they implement it right. But so far, it seems as you mentioned, I like a lot of the stuff that they did with the system. It seems I'm having fun with it. I to like the pokey style, and then setting up your launches rather than just launch fest.
Right. Yeah.
But I was just curious what you were doing with it, and it sounds like you're playing it all the time.
They have Steve is actually a playable character in that game. I haven't unlocked him yet. I unlocked every character besides Steve. I'm pissed, but
he was the first one I unlocked. He's actually the only unlocked character.
I unlocked dude. I was like looking forward to my third character because it took forever, and I was like, all right, please be Steve, and it ended up being Brian, which wasn't a problem because I like Brian too. But I talked to a friend that plays Steve, and he was telling me that not only did they come out with Tekken Revolution as like this invincible game where you have invincible moves, but they actually added tweaks to characters like Steve, where his down forward 2, they changed the animation of the counter hit, so he doesn't counter hit you. He doesn't do counter hit 2, and you fly back. In Tekken Revolution, you do down forward 2, and you end up right in your opponent's face, kind of like Kaz's down forward 2. And I thought that was very, very cool. Like they realized that Steve, has these flaws, and they're fixing them. So it's not even just a new game. It's they're just changing it for the better. And I know he has some other tweaks in there too. I can't really think of them on top of my head, but he definitely got buffed in Tekken Revolution as a character.
I'm glad you mentioned that because it felt that way to me as well, where it feels like they're also kind of using it as a testing environment, kind of messing around with tweaks and changes to characters to, see how they work. And who knows, maybe we're looking at an update to Tag down the road.
I hope it's the update to okay, so I heard from somebody that they said that Harada said that he's done with Tag 2. So, like, he's not updating Tag 2 anymore. I think Tag 2 they already put it out there. No more updates. They're done with it. But I hope Tekken Revolution is, like, the blueprint for the new Tekken versus Street Fighter. because
Yeah, I heard that. I heard a
yeah,
lot of people talking about that.
I
Yeah.
hope the engine runs like that because I absolutely love Tekken Revolution. I think the meta game is really really good, and you feel like you're in control. There's nothing to It's they made it. I think what they did was they just made it more simple, and
Mhm.
they kind of went for a Street Fighter kind of feel. It's more flashy. Uh, it's just nothing to really. You don't have to worry about all these other moves. I feel like people only use like 10 moves in that game because like there's no need to do all this flashy stuff. Like you poke, you do what you got to do, whiff punish, whatever, whatever, and so it's a simpler game, and I think it's gonna appeal to a lot of people in general, and that's what Namco needs to do. I feel like because Tag Two is extremely hard for the average player to pick up. Like for me, coming from a high level perspective, it was tough for me because I was playing it like T6 and it wasn't T6. It was Tag 2. It was completely different. So Namco just needs to, I think, simplify the game in general, and you'll definitely have a lot more players playing the new Tekken that comes out.
Well, and I think that's completely valid. Everything that perspective, and if you look at Street Fighter, that's kind of how Street Fighter works. So that's I think that that might be sort of how they're going to appeal to that crowd because you figure that's how Street Fighter works. You have a smaller move list that you work with. It's lots of footsies, which if you were to translate it in Tekken would be pokes. And then just like a Shoryu off the ground, OTG, you have these invincible moves, so that you don't have to eat the mix up. So yeah, it's definitely absolutely feels like they might be gearing it up for that game, which
Yeah,
who knows when we'll see that, but
yeah. I'm
yeah,
waiting
if
for some
it plays.
trailers.
Yeah, if it plays like Revolution, I'll definitely be playing it because that game is for sure fun.
Same here. I'll definitely pick that up tournament wise, and I'll definitely go in on that game.
All right, well that's all the extra stuff. That's really the only topic out
Once,
there that's newsworthy. So with that, the last little segment that I have for the episode, I usually do like a little rant section. So I'm gonna give you a little soapbox. I'm gonna make you stand on it, and then just tell everybody who's listening what makes you really mad. Like what would make you pick up your TV and just throw it out the window.
oh God. I have. Oh man. Okay, so I'll keep it Tekken related.
And you don't have to if you don't want to. If there's something really, really on, bugging you that's not Tekken related.
Okay, so besides online, besides Tekken Tag 2 online, I won't even talk about that. But I think the one thing coming from a high level perspective that really really frustrates me with Tag 2 is the character hitboxes. Like there's no standard hitbox. I could do a combo at the wall and it'll hit maybe half the cast and won't hit the smaller characters. And then you have characters like Jinpachi and Murdoch who fall extremely fast and you can't do your staple. And then you have characters like Ling, Zhao Yu, whatever, that are super small that like dodge that last hit that you're trying to do at the wall. And it just applies so much inconsistency that pisses me off, and it just is so frustrating. And then you have characters like Alex. I play Clam all the time, and he plays Alex and Roger. And Alex has really, really small hitbox. I think the smallest hitbox in the game. I know Wang is pretty small, but there's something about Alex where when I do my bread and butter at the wall with Nina and Lars, I most likely always drop it. And like sometimes it hits, sometimes it doesn't, and I just have to opt out for a less damaging juggle. But it just is so stupid how I have to change my staple just because of all these hitboxes. So that's what I can't stand.
No, I definitely I feel you on that one because I remember when Cody was on and we were talking about Kazuya. It's a character that relies heavily on situations and
Yeah,
knowing what to do in each situation. I feel like that's what Tekken sort of turned into with Tag 2, where hitboxes are so weird and
right.
they're not consistent. So even though you can plan ahead and you can predict what's going to happen, like you have to have all this situational knowledge, like
Right.
what's going to happen in that exact situation. Whereas,
certain angles and all that.
yeah. Whereas in the past, you could be like, okay, if I get into this mix up, I know that I have, these 3 options, and then they have this to choose from. But it's just, it's like
Tag 2 is just way
multiplied.
too picky. It's just way too
Yeah.
picky. Yeah.
Pretty much. Well, with that, that's all I got, man. So for the very, very last part, I usually give my guests the mic, for shout outs or anything else
Oh,
that you
awesome.
want to throw out there. So yeah, if you have anyone you want to shout out, or if there's anything else that you want to say, the platform is yours.
All right. I definitely want to shout out the MA scene, the Boston mass scene. Um, so Greg Dunlap, he pretty much runs this thing in Boston. It's called UGS, Underground Gaming Station, or something like that. Um, he he applies this platform for us where we can get together as a Boston community and play Tekken and just get better and give advice to other players and kind of help grow the scene, all that stuff. So props to Greg Dunlap, appreciate it. And then I want to shout out Off in Bed, Nick. He's actually working on this. Well, he has out for Android this Tekken Chicken app. And so if you guys don't know about it, support that, download it, do what you got to do. Shout out to Still Electric, also a very, very well-known Mishima player. Solid as hell. These 2 guys, Nick and Danny, uh, they've been playing T6 with me back in the day, and I was pretty much whipping their ass. But now these guys have gotten so much better in Tag 2. Like I can barely keep up with these guys. So much props to them for excelling and doing great things. So keep it up, guys. Yeah, and that's everybody, man. So
Great. Well, it sounds like you got the dogs freaking out. So
yes, my little husky puppy I just got.
yeah. Nice. Yeah, we used to have a husky. Unfortunately, she passed away a few years ago. But we had a Malamute for a short time, and they are awesome dogs. They are very, very cool. So with that, well, thanks a lot for coming on and talking some Steve with me. I appreciate it. And of course, thank you out there, everyone, for listening. As normal, I don't know who's going to be next. It's just kind of whoever I can get and who's still on the list. So with that, thanks everyone. Thanks again, Nelson, for coming on, and we will catch everyone next time. Have a good one.